All right, good Sunday evening. Here we are on chapter 20 of First Samuel. It's David's in a predicament. You know, old King Saul's wanting to kill him. His best friend is King Saul's son. He turns out to be a good ally for him. But this is David's last chapter as a free man. He becomes a fugitive for a long time till old King Saul dies after tonight's chapter. But let's read and see what's going on here in chapter 20. First Samuel. David fled. You remember he'd went down to a place called Naioth in Ramah, and he came and said before Jonathan. He come back and talked to Jonathan and says, "What have I done? What is mine iniquity or sin? And what is my sin before your father that he's wanting to kill me? He seeks my life." And Jonathan said to him, "God forbid, thou shalt not die. Behold, my father will do nothing, great or small, but he'll show it to me. I'll know about it. And why should my father hide this thing from me? It's not so. I'll find out." And David sware, moreover, and said, "Thy father certainly knows that I've found grace in your eyes." He knows we're buddies, Jonathan, and he's probably saying, "Don't let Jonathan know about this, lest he be grieved. But truly as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth," David said, "there's but a step between me and death. I'm that close to him killing me." And that verse spoke to me the first time I ever read it. I realized how fragile life was, and like any of us at any time, there could just be a step between us and death. The next step could be our last step. And I've said, if you watched the Weekly Word recently when we were at Jenkins' grave, I said there's a 1,000 trap doors to hell. You can die in a lot of different ways. But I said, if you're a Christian, you don't have to look at them as trap doors to hell. It's launching pads to heaven. It all depends on what you've done with Christ. But in this fragile body that we live in here, there's but a step between us and death at any time. There's but a few feet going home here in a little while between me and death, and all those cars that we're passing. You ever think about how many cars that you pass just 3 feet or so away, and just look down, either one of you at one moment hit head on it? It's just a step between us and death all the time. Verse 4, then said Jonathan to David. David's talking about Saul going to kill him was his step. Wrong step and I'm dead. Verse 4, then said Jonathan to David, he's going to answer him, said, "Whatsoever your soul desires, I'll do it for you." "Whatever you want me to do, David, I'll do it." And David said to Jonathan, okay, I've been thinking about this. He said, "Behold, tomorrow's the new moon." And apparently on the first of every month, the king has a cabinet meeting, and David's going to be expected to be there in his seat. So David said, "Tomorrow's the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat." It's a monthly luncheon. Apparently lasted for a few days at the beginning of the month, we'll find out. But he said, "But let me go, that I can hide myself in the field to the third day at evening. And if your father at all miss me," David's telling Jonathan, "then tell him," here's what I want you to tell your daddy. "If he misses me, say, David earnestly asked of me leave that he might run to Bethlehem," his city, his hometown, "for there's a yearly sacrifice there for all the family." And he wanted to be there, and you tell him that you let me go. That's where I'm at. They're making up a fib, right, to cover his getting killed here. And David says, "And if he says thus, okay, it's well, it's fine. And then thy servant can have peace. But if he's angry or wroth, then be sure that evil is determined of him. Therefore thou shalt deal kindly with thy servant, for thou hast brought thy servant into a covenant of the Lord with thee, notwithstanding." David says, "If there be any iniquity, slay me yourself." You go ahead and kill me yourself. "For why should thou bring me to your father?" And David probably knew his friend Jonathan would be more merciful to him. And Jonathan said, "Far be it from thee, for if I knew certainly that evil were determined by my father to come up on you, wouldn't I tell you?" Then said David to Jonathan, Who shall tell me? How am I going to know the answer? What if thy father answers thee roughly? How are you going to get word to me?" And Jonathan said to David, "Well, come and let's go out into the field." And they went out, both of them, out into the field. And Jonathan said to David, "O Lord God of Israel, when I have sounded my father, when I've felt him out, tested him, finding out how he's doing here, when I've sounded my father about tomorrow any time or the third day, and behold, if there be good toward David, and then send not unto thee, and show it to thee. Then, if I don't let you know, then the Lord do so, and much more to Jonathan. Trust me, David, I'll let you know. But if it please my father to do evil to you, then I'll show that to you. I'll tell you the truth, and I'll send you away, so that you can flee, that you can go in peace. And the Lord be with thee, as he's been with my father. And thou shalt not only while yet I live show me kindness of the Lord, that I die not. I'm making this deal with you, David. Says, we're friends. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to do my best, even at betraying my own father. But in return, I want you to always show kindness to me, and not just to me, he's going to say, but to my family, my descendants from now. Because Jonathan recognized that David was going to be king someday. Now, Saul's all about this. He's thinking, I've made a mistake putting David in line for this throne, and I really should have left my son Jonathan in line for the throne. But Jonathan recognizes that, hey, David's God's man for the throne. And so he says, just remember me. Now, I've been good to you, so you be good to my family when you come to the throne. Not just to me, verse 15, but also that you'll not cut off your kindness from my house, my family, forever. No, not when the Lord has cut off the enemies of David, every one from the face of the earth. Remember us. So John, and that's important to remember this little verse right here, because as we go through the chapters, we're going to see David's going to become king one day, and he's going to remember this covenant that he made with Jonathan, and he's going to show kindness to Jonathan's son, even maybe when he don't deserve it sometime, because he made that deal with him long ago with his daddy. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, let the Lord even require it at the hand of David's enemies. Verse 17. And Jonathan caused David to swear or promise again, because he loved him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. Then Jonathan said to David, tomorrow is the new moon, and you'll be missed. It's that cabinet meeting day, because your seat will be empty. And when you've stayed 3 days, then shalt thou go down quickly and come to the place where you did hide yourself when the business was in hand. And you remain by the stone Ezel. You remember that big field down there, David? You go down there and hide behind that rock. That one that everybody calls Ezel, that big rock that's a prominent rock. You hide in the edge of that field behind that rock. That's the plans we're making. And I'll come out and I'll shoot 3 arrows on the side of that rock, as though I was shooting at a mark or a target. And behold, I'll send a lad. When he'd go out and practice, he'd take a little boy with him to go gather the arrows up that he'd shoot. And he said, I'll send out a lad saying, go find the arrows. And now here's our code, David. Don't you forget this now. If I expressly say to the lad, behold, the arrows are on this side of thee. Take them and then come back, come thou. And he's telling David, if I say that to that boy, then you can come out. You can come out, and for there's peace to thee and no hurt, as the Lord liveth. But if I say thus to the young man, behold, the arrows are beyond thee, it's on farther down there. David, that means that you get on out of here. You go your way, for the Lord sent you away. And as touching the matter which thou and I have spoken of, behold, the Lord be between me and thee forever. So they're going to carry out the plan now. A day or two went by, and so David hid himself in the field behind that rock that they called Ezel. And when the new moon was come, the king sat down to eat his meat. It was the cabinet meeting day. And the king, he sat upon his seat, as at other times, the head of the table, I guess, even upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side. Everybody was there in the cabinet, but David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake not a thing. He didn't even mention that David's seat was empty, for he thought, well, maybe he's sick. Something had befallen him. He's not clean. Surely he's not clean, or today, or something couldn't come. And it came to pass on the morrow, which was the 2nd day of the month, they must have been meeting for another day, that David's place was empty. And Saul said to Jonathan his son, wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meat? Why didn't he come to eat? He wasn't here yesterday or today. What's going on? And Jonathan answered Saul. He said, David earnestly asked leave for me to go to Bethlehem. He told him that fib. And he said, let me go. David said, let me go, I pray thee, for our families has a sacrifice in the city, and my brother, he's commanded me to be there. I've got to go, can't get out of this thing. And now I have found, if I found favor in your eyes, let me go away, I pray thee, and see my brothers. And that's why he's not here, Daddy. That's why he didn't come to the king's table. I give him leave. Then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan. He didn't like that. And he said unto him, remember, Saul, he flew off the handle all the time. He's done flew off the handle and threw a javelin at David twice trying to nail him to the wall. Well, he flies off the handle here, and he says, you son of a perverse, rebellious woman. That reminds me of Jackie Gleason in the Smokey and the Bandit. Remember, he had that old dumb boy, and that dumb boy did something dumb, and Jackie Gleason said, as soon as I get home, I am going to smack your mama because you couldn't have come from my loins. Well, that's kind of what Saul's saying here. Says, you son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do not I know that thou hast chosen the son of Jesse to your own confusion? That's David, the son of Jesse. Or confusion could also be translated shame here. You've chosen to make friends with him to your own shame, and unto the shame or confusion of your mother's nakedness. Shame on y'all. Shame, shame, shame. For as long as the son of Jesse lives upon the ground, you'll not be established, son. Don't you understand? I've got to get rid of that David if you're ever going to be king. Nor your kingdom will ever be established. Wherefore now send and fetch him unto me, for he shall surely die. And Jonathan answered Saul his father and said unto him, wherefore shall he be slain? Why are you going to kill him? What's he done? Which is a good question. And Saul cast a javelin at him to smite him. Now he flew off the handle and threw. I tell you what, I'm not an advocate of gun control, but Saul definitely had a mental issue, which was really a spiritual issue, and behind many mental issues is spiritual issues, and he just should not have been allowed to own any more javelins. This is the third time he's threw that thing, and he tried to pin his own boy to the wall this time to smite him, whereby Jonathan knew that it was determined of his father to slay David. He knew if he'll kill David, he's about to kill me. So Jonathan rose from the table in fierce anger. He is mad at his daddy now, and he did eat no meat. He got up and left for eat. I don't blame him. Just got a javelin threw at him. For he was grieved because of David, and his father had done him shame. He was ashamed of his daddy, and he had a right to be. 35. And it came to pass in the morning that Jonathan went out to the field like him and David had planned. David's in there hiding behind the rock, right? He's waiting to get some news. And Jonathan went out to the field at the time appointed with David. And Jonathan, of course, took a little lad with him. That was custom. You know, they go out and practice with your bow and arrow, and you take a little old boy to go fetch your arrows for you. A little lad with him, verse 36. And he said to his lad, run, find out now the arrows which I shoot. So he shot some, and as the lad ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. And when the lad was come to the place of the arrow which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan cried after the lad and said, it's a little farther. Is not the arrow beyond thee? That was code for David to do what? You better run. You got to get out of Dodge, David. And Jonathan cried after the lad, said, make speed, haste, stay not, don't tarry. Which is talking to the boy. The boy didn't know David was there, but he was really talking to David. What? You got to go. And you got to go in a hurry. And Jonathan's lad gathered up the arrows and brought them back to his master. But the lad knew not anything. Only Jonathan and David knew the matter. And David's hiding behind the rock. The boy don't know he's there. And Jonathan gave his artillery unto his lad. He gave his bow and his quiver full of arrows back to the little boy. And he said, go ahead and take them home, son. Take them back to the city. And as soon as the lad was gone, David arose out of the place toward the south behind that rock, and he fell on his face to the ground, and he bowed himself 3 times to Jonathan, and they kissed one another, they greeted one another, welcomed one another, they wept with one another until David exceeded. And Jonathan said to David, Go in peace, for as much as we've sworn, both of us, in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord between me and thee, and between my seed and your seed, between our children, descendants, grandchildren forever. But you got to go, because Daddy's going to try to kill you. And he arose and departed. David left, and Jonathan went back home to the city. And from this point on, until old King Saul dies, David's going to be a fugitive, and we're going to follow them adventures here as he's trying to stay alive, because Saul really wants him dead. We'll see you next Sunday.